Welcome to the show, everyone. Appreciate everyone listening tonight. I want to talk for a moment about people's encounters, and for those of you out there who have had encounters, I think the bulk of our audience probably has not had an encounter, but is either intrigued by the subject or enjoys the subject. Those of you who have had an encounter will understand what I'm talking about. I took a video. I wanted to show people on SasquatchChronicles.com what the area looked like where Woody and I had our encounter. So I went up there. I have bought a cheap GoPro, went up to the place and started filming it. And as I was filming it, I almost didn't post this to the website because I looked pretty wimpy in the video, and I didn't like how I portrayed myself. But it's interesting when you retell an experience, retell an encounter, and as you've heard many encounters on the show, you get a sense that the person is reliving what they're going through. And it's true, when you've had an encounter, you do relive the moment. And so, in my great idea of going up and filming the area where Woody and I had our encounter, it bothered me more than I thought it would. And as I was filming it, kind of explaining, here's where they're walking in on us, here's where the one crawled up on us, here's where, here's where all these different things happened, and kind of explaining the area, it really hit me when I was filming where the one had walked across the road. And it really bothered me. I think the point, it's funny, your mind turns into almost like a movie reel. And as I was sitting there filming it, explaining where this one had walked across the road, all I could picture in my mind was that monster walking across the road and preventing us from leaving. And so it really bothered me. I appreciate everyone's nice comments on SasquatchChronicles.com. It wasn't easy for me, so I definitely appreciate everyone's nice comments. Here's a clip from the actual video. You can imagine coming up here at night. I mean, it looks kind of eerie during the day, but as you can come up here at night, it's even more creepy. But this is the game trail road I talked about that Woody wanted to put it in four-wheel drive and go down. And we stopped about right here, and that's when Woody got out of the car and wanted to take a look at the game trail so he could jump back in and tell me everything's okay, we got four-wheel drive, let's go. And off to our left is where we first started hearing footsteps. And I'll hop out here and show you. Man, it's creepy as hell up here. When we're sitting in the car, and I'll show you off to our left over here is where we started hearing footsteps. Something walking through this area right here towards the car. And right now it's February, but during the time of our encounter it was November. And as you can see, it's still kind of open, but this was a lot more open in November. A lot more trees, a lot more deadfall. This is the road where all the leaves were, where I talked about the thing crawling out. But as we sat in the car, footsteps started off in this direction coming towards us, and we could hear this thing walking through the brush coming towards us. And off in this direction I could hear another set coming in on us, and right directly in front of us, down a little ways, we could hear another set coming towards us. So we sat in the car, started hearing the footsteps come in, and trying to figure out what was going on. At the time of our encounter, this whole thing was a pile of leaves sitting up here that had fallen, and just debris that had fallen. And as we were hearing the footsteps come up, something had come out of the brush I want to say in this general direction, came out of the brush and came up, and this is where it started crawling towards the back of the car. Both of us had our windows down. We could hear this thing just coming through the brush. It would stop. It would growl at us. It'd come up a little bit more. And it's obviously, it wasn't up walking like I'm walking. This thing, I'm pretty sure, was down on its hands and knees, crawling towards the car. But it would growl, come up more, growl, all the way back up. And I'm pretty sure it came up to to our back bumper. And that's when we decided to back up and get out of here. To actually get out of here, the road that we came down is this road. It's the only road in. It's the only road out if you want out of here. This just takes you deeper and deeper and deeper into the woods. This is actually Yakult Mountain. I think that you can probably hear the river down there. And I'll take you down there in a second and show you. But we've tried to climb up this, and it doesn't look like much, probably from here where my camera's sitting, but that's a pain. It's a lot thicker than it looks, and it's just a pain to get up into that area. When we came back to get the GPS, this is where we had seen footprints, and if I grab it off Facebook, I'll show you the footprints, but this is where we saw, as you can see, the ground's not great for footprints, but right here on the hill, we got a pretty good footprint of this thing stepping and going back up. And I kind of think, I mean, if you were to ask me, I think they're up on that hill. I think they come down at night, and we've been up here many times. We've heard roaring from up in this direction. We've heard screaming from up in that direction. We've heard whooping. But as we backed up and we turned the car around, we pulled the car. Woody probably drove, 30, 40 feet, something like that. And we'd stopped here, so Woody turned the car off and said that he just needed a second, couldn't drive us. Both our hands were shaking. I was looking straight ahead. Woody was looking up to his left. And in this tree, it looked like a monkey wrapped around, just had its legs wrapped around, had its arms wrapped around, and it just looked like a monkey in a tree. And I remember leaning over out of the car and looking up and just seeing this monkey in a tree. And as I sat back down and him and I just kind of talked about it, I had asked, I told him I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a monkey in a tree. And about that time, off in this direction up here, we could hear breathing. Something breathing heavy. Couldn't see it. But in this whole area, the moon was coming up from this direction and was just lighting this whole area up. But up on this ridge up here, something was breathing real heavy at us, and we just couldn't see it. This is about where our car was stopped. Where we had stopped to, I wanted to kind of show you, there's these white trees, I think they're white, kind of white trees, and as the moon was coming in, it was lighting this whole area up. Now, these things were coming behind the car, and they'd come from my vantage point in the car, looking down at my mirror, looking up at this hill, listening to the breathing. I could see these white trees. Something was running, what I know now what it was, but at the time I didn't know what it was running across this road. It would stand by these white trees, and as the moon was coming in, it was lighting everything up. I could make out a figure or whatever it was, but it would almost block these trees. Then it would take off running this way. And it did it a couple times. It would run across this here, stand in front of these trees, run back, and I could see it from my passenger side mirror. And that's about the time I told Woody I wanted to leave. I didn't want to be here anymore. let's go. We had time to kind of gather our senses, and that's when the big one stepped out right here. As you see the road turning, it stepped out into the road right here, probably 60, 70 feet away. It stepped out into the road, and it would stop, it would look at us, kind of turn its body, look at us, and it took its sweet time getting across this road. It's not there anymore, but there used to be a downfall tree right over here. It was a pretty big downfall tree, and that's when it was coming across this road, and it went behind this tree, and that's when it was playing the step out of the and I can't talk. I fucking hate this place. It stepped out into the road. That's when the big one stepped out into the road, and he was taking a sweet time getting across this road. He came down from this area. He'd step down into the road and would take one or two steps, turn and look at us, one or two steps, turn and look at us, one or two steps, turn and look at us. There was a deadfall tree on the other side of this road. That's not there now, but it used to be. We came back and measured it. It was about 8 feet up off the ground, and that's when he stood behind it, and we could see him standing there. He obviously wasn't hiding, but we could see him standing there, and he would come out and do kind of a pump action like he's going to charge us, and then he'd go back and stand behind the tree, and to this day I don't know why he did that, but he would just come out and come out, kind of pump like he was going to charge us, then go back and stand behind that tree. And he did that several times. And when he went back behind this tree, you can kind of see up on the right hand side, there's kind of I hate to say it's like a ridge top, but it's kind of goes up, and a white one or a light gray one jumped off of this, and we literally saw it like in midair land in the middle of the road, and then it went down this way. The big one stepped out, and he dropped down to all fours and kind of crawled out in the middle of the road, kind of looked at us, and then went off this side and went down. And I'll show you kind of where they're headed, but yeah, it was a wild night. And again, to watch the full video, please go to SasquatchChronicles.com. First guest tonight, we'll be talking with Bruce. And Bruce kind of had an interesting encounter. He had actually a couple interesting encounters really close to his property. But I wanted to bring Bruce on so he could talk about his encounters. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Well, I've had a couple of encounters from about 2011 when I moved into this house through 2013.
Let's start off with your first one. Tell us what you were doing and what happened.
Okay, well, the very first thing that happened was right after we moved in. This is my mother-in-law's house, and she was in a nursing home. And the house had been empty for probably about a year or more. And it used to have a bunch of floodlights, and they're all gone now. But anyway, I slept in the basement because I have sleep apnea, so I snore very loud and irregular. And my son was down there with me, and he woke me up, and he said there was a growling at the window. We had an open window at the time. It really freaked him out, and he saw some eyes shining through the window. And then a couple of days later, about 11 o'clock at night, on a drizzly night, he's about 17, by the way, I decided I wanted to go out and get some ice cream at the store for a little treat for he and I and his mother. So we were riding, and probably about half a mile from the house, we saw this huge black figure on the side of the road. And my first thought, I slowed down as I saw it to about 20, 25 miles an hour, and it was just a real light drizzle. My first thought was it was shaped like a Newfoundland, one of those big German St. Bernard type dogs. But it was about 5 foot tall at the shoulder, and the tail looked like it was broken halfway down or bent about like 20, 30 degrees, and it was wagging real slow. And as I rode by it, I was staring at it the whole time, and it was just black. It looked like black mangy fur that had been rolled in oil and then dirt and then wet. It just looked nasty. And I was in a 2000 Explorer, and this thing was a little bit taller than the hood of my truck. And it was close enough my son could have reached out the window and touched it. And it was in a little dip off the edge of the road about a foot below the road's height. And I just wish I had stopped, because my headlights were just, the road was bending, so my lights were right on it. I wish I'd hit the high beams and blew the horn to get it to move. I did a quick U-turn at the very next corner, and it was gone. I was talking with my son, and as soon as we had turned around to go look for it again, all that went through both of our minds was it had to be a Bigfoot or something like that. It had to be an arm sticking out. It's what it looked like. I was trying to make it a tail in my mind. But that would have been a huge dog. We're talking as big as a buffalo on the side of the road. And, I've owned big dogs. I've had a St. Bernard. I've had Rottweilers. I know what size dogs are. I know the biggest dogs are English Mastiffs. They get about 250 pounds. But this was no dog. It didn't have a head. Because that's what I was kind of looking for as I rode by, was a head. It was like just this big, black, nasty, hairy blob with a thing sticking out that kind of looked like a tail, but more like an arm. And it had hair. It was probably about 5 inches, 6 inches long, all matted up and hanging off of it. And it just kind of had like a blunt end to it. I didn't see a hand. My headlights weren't quite on that end of it. I was thinking a dog on all fours, but if picturing it in my mind, and I've been thinking it over ever since. It's been stuck in my brain almost like an obsession. Like, I just wish I'd blown the horn at it, but the best I can figure, it was like just a big Bigfoot with its arms sticking out back to the road and its head down where I couldn't see its head. And I rode up looking at its arm and its side, and as I rode past, I'm looking at its back. That's the only thing I could figure it could be. It was just too huge. There's a farm that has cattle right across the street from there, and it was bigger than any of their cattle.
So what did your son say when you guys drove past it? You guys drive past? Obviously, I don't think you guys really have bear that size out there.
We give black bear up to about 200 pounds, but they're very rare around here. Now, we did have a news report that supposedly a mother and like 3 cubs were in the area maybe about 3 or 4 weeks later, and people were supposed to stay away, but never heard anything about them catching it, moving them, killing them, or anything. Yeah, and it's I know a bear. I've been in the woods. I was in the Scouts. I'm not a big hunter. I'm more of a person that gets deer fever, where I will pop the shotgun at 300 yards at a deer. I get too trigger happy, so I don't hunt. It costs too much money when you're like that.
Well, let me ask you this: what was your guys' conversation like? You spun the car around. Obviously, you must have figured there was something wrong.
Well, we knew there was something wrong as we were going by it. We were going really slow. I'm guessing probably 20 miles an hour. We looked at it for a good, probably 3 seconds of time. Because it was a good hunk of road that we were riding a bend in it where it was at. And it was just still wagging that limb or whatever was sticking out really slow, probably moving it maybe like 2-3 inches. Just very unnatural looking. It just didn't look like it belonged. And my son was, I mean, he's not one for panic, but he was rather boisterous, and we were both talking at the same time. Like, what was that? Making a lot of noise, and not listening to each other. But I mean, I just whipped the truck around and looked, and it was gone. And then we kicked ourselves the whole way down to the store to get ice cream. We were talking about we should have stopped. It's a road where it's 45-mile-an-hour road, and a lot of people drive fast through there. So,
probably
that's the only reason I didn't stop.
Yeah. It's probably best you didn't too. You never know what's going to happen when you run into one of these things.
Yeah, well, I felt kind of safe in an Explorer with all the windows up, and I could always gun it. But after I've read some stuff on your website, I'm like, I'm glad I didn't stop and blow the horn at it.
Yeah.
I really don't. I don't need a better view of what it looked like, and I don't know how many more might have been around. I think I just caught it off guard and it froze. When my headlights hit it.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what it was doing there next to the road. Almost you wonder if it was doing, eating the roadkill.
Well, right at my house, I have usually about 4 or 5 deer sleeping right next to the house, and we have deer constantly on that road killed. I mean, we have, skunks, deer. Now, I'm not way out in the country, but deer are just, in yards and all up in this area. I mean, just tons of them. It's like nobody hunts in this area. I've had one more visual encounter, which actually confirmed the first, I think, and I've had a couple of experiences that are weird around my house. But about a year later, I was I'm a night owl, and I've got a lot of arthritis, so I don't sleep well. And I woke up about 5 o'clock and decided to go do some grocery shopping when nobody's at the store. And I got up and went out and warmed up truck and was going to the grocery store. And the sun was just coming up. And this is about probably a half mile to 3/4 of a mile further down this road in more an urban setting. But there's this real steep embankment beside the road at about probably like a 12-12 pitch roof. It's a 45-degree, lot of, brush and, vine and stuff on it. It's not kept at all. But it was in November, and a lot of the green had fallen off. And I was probably about maybe 250, 300 feet away. But I saw something that looked like almost like a black stick figure run from the road straight up the hill. And it just looked like it was effortless and like it was just flying up this hill. I mean, by stick figure, it was just a black silhouette. It was thin, but it was moving. And this brush is 6 foot high. And, I can't really guess the height of it, but I'm imagining it's probably about 7.5, 8 foot tall. And it was just flying up that hill, just running. I can't even hardly describe it. Almost like an Olympiad, just a perfect form, just moving. The arms are flailing, but it was flying up that hill. There's no way you could even hardly walk up that hill, let alone run up it.
Was it on 2 legs when it was running up the hill?
Oh yeah, definitely 2 legs. I'm kind of excited to actually get this stuff off my chest. I didn't really pay attention to dimensions of the arms and legs and the body. Yeah, the hair. I didn't really pay much attention to that because I was just amazed at it going up the hill. But it just looked like an athlete, with just perfectly flying up that hill. And we got joggers around here, but nobody's running up that hill.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is could it have been a person? Do you think it could have been a person running up that hill? And that's a question I realize that people might be asking in their minds when they hear it. The hill, the way it ran.
Well, like I said, it's like a 12-12 pitch, like a 45-degree angle, and just weed-covered vines, little bushes and all kinds of stuff just to tear you up. And I'm on disability. I don't make much money. I would give somebody $100 if they could run up that hill in less than 5 minutes.
How many seconds did you get to see it, and how much ground do you think it covered?
Oh, well, I saw it for, I'd say maybe 2 seconds at max. And it went point to point probably about 125 feet, maybe.
Yeah, that's quite the, especially up that incline. You know, if you're sitting there going 1,000, 1,000, it's covering a lot of ground in a short amount of time.
Yeah, it was only like 6 or 7 steps to it. I mean, it almost looked like a cartoon the way it moved up the hill. I mean, I'm thinking, physics. It's like, the feet should be sliding out from under it, and it should be grabbing at the ground, but it's just running. It's just flying up the hill.
Well, tell me, what's going on around your property? You said you had a few things going on around your property.
Well, I've kind of given up sleeping in the basement because right in the basement, it has a walkout basement with a big glass door that I now keep a lot of like old wire and stuff in front of. But it's kind of got a sheltered area. It's just pitch black behind the house. My father-in-law landscaped the place like perfect for burglars. Because there's like these 20-foot trees on every corner of the house, and then the whole back is lined with trees about 25 feet behind us, and a little cubby hole where the deer love to lay right next to the house back there. And I'm laying there, and I've got a window unit air conditioner in the basement. And it's, so the windows are cracked open a little bit. You can hear me outside. And with my sleep apnea, when I'm sleeping, I'm doing, I'll stop breathing and then go real loud, And one night I was down there, let's say it was probably after I saw that one run up the hill. But I have a little dog. It's half Cocker Spaniel, half Dachshund. She's about like 12 pounds, right? Pretty fearless for most of the part. Well, anyway, she's down there with me, and I woke up. I was on the couch, and she had crawled up on top of my head, and she was just trembling. I mean, just about ready, vibrate the top of my head off. And I woke up and pulled her off, and it was right at sunrise, and I heard this like that at the window, and I looked over, and a shadow fell over the whole window. And then I heard like 3 thumps, and that was it. It was gone. I mean, I didn't see anything, but the light was blocked, and then the light was there again. And I heard these 3 loud thumps outside, like it was running off or it hit something or it was just, and that was it. And my son has heard weird sounds out the back from the basement. And, we'd be sitting there watching TV and, like, just pause the TV and you hear things out there or you hear all the deer just all of a sudden run away. It's pretty odd. Now, my son did have one experience by himself. He was jogging on our road, and there's an access that comes up to our neighborhood where he likes to finish. He runs downhill, then walks back up the hill. And as he was walking back, he saw something about 3 foot tall that was black. And this is also a very steep hill, but it's very short. But he saw these 2 black things stick up in the air, and then it just darted up the hill. And it was like 3 foot tall, just a black blob with like 2 black things up in the air. And he said he stood there for a minute, and then he walked up the hill, and he couldn't find anything. And all I was thinking, if we're seeing Sasquatch here, which that would have been a young one, and that means Mom was probably watching him while he was going up the hill. But other than that, I mean, we've heard a few things. Last couple of years, it's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, it almost makes you want to go check out up that hill.
Well, I mean, I've been up there. It's a really nice property up there, but it's just lined with really thick with about 20, 30-year-old pines.
Yeah,
the man had put there to hold the erosion back. But it's just I don't want to mess with them.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
I'm a pretty brave guy. I used to be a power lifter, Yeah, I benched 600 pounds one time in a local competition back in my 20s. And, I'm still pretty strong, but I'm getting arthritic. And my first thought was, if I go in the woods looking for Bigfoot, I'm the one that's the weak, old one. Yeah,
Yeah, I hear
the
you.
animals go for the weak and the tired or the young and the sick.
Yeah, I gotcha. I gotcha.
I don't want to be out, and I don't run fast anyway, and I've got bad knees and bad feet too, and I just I can't. I'd have to take people in wheelchairs to be able to out and run somebody.
I gotcha.
Anyway,
Yeah.
I appreciate you calling me, Wes. I do feel a lot better now that I've shared this.
Oh, I appreciate sharing. I appreciate coming
All
on
right,
and sharing. And
your experience, I would probably still be pooping my pants.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on and sharing, man.
Yeah, well, I'm just, I can't believe how cowardly I got really quick about Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Once I saw him, I was like, I used to think, I ain't no big deal. It's like Harry and the Hendersons, big friendly fella hanging out in the woods. And then I'm like, no, nature don't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way.
And then that Finding Bigfoot show, all I'm thinking is, if y'all were going out looking for a grizzly bear, would y'all be going out going, let's take little children out to look for grizzly bears?
Yeah. No, it wouldn't happen.
That show drives me crazy, but I still watch it.
Yeah, it's still fun to hear people's encounters.
All right. Well, you have a wonderful night. I hope you get some rest in.
All right. Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate it, man.
All right, man. Bye.
Our next guest is Gail Beatty from the Hudson Valley area of New York State. She has what I would consider a situation going on that's very similar to the Browns in the Chehalis area of Washington State.
Welcome, Gail, to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Is this Wes?
Yeah, this is Wes. I got Will and Shannon on the line. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're
Hi, Gail.
welcome. Thanks for having me. Hi, guys and girls.
Yeah, thank you, Gail.
I'm excited and a little nervous. It's my first time, so lots of stuff happening. Yeah,
you did fine.
So.
What I want to do is, first of all, let's go back to the beginning when you first got involved in all this. Before we talk about anything that's going on there, tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in this subject.
All right. Well, I grew up in Pine Plains, New York, and at the base of Stissing Mountain. And we have two lakes, one across the street from our house and then another big lake. And I grew up hunting, fishing, horseback riding, camping, milking cows on friends' farms, and, just an outdoors person. And one evening, I guess I was maybe about 14 or 15, I got grounded by my parents for something I did, so I didn't tell anybody. I just decided I was going to go up on the mountain and camp out there by myself. So I took my tent and set it up. It was still light out, and it started to get dark out, and I was fine. I'd always been up in the woods and, never had any fear of anything. And when it started to get dark, all of a sudden I heard this owl really loud and really close, and it sounded like a great horned owl to me. So I was like, okay, it's just an owl. Don't worry, nothing's going to hurt you. And a few seconds later, this god-awful, scream, yell, howl, the loudest, most terrifying sound I had ever heard in my life. Sounded like it was within feet of my tent, and I just froze. I couldn't even move. I couldn't, I was just paralyzed with fear. So I don't know how long I stayed there, but finally I got up enough nerve and I just ran down the hill and burst into the house, and my parents were like, where were you? What's the matter? You're all white and shaking. And I said, something is up on that mountain, and I don't know what it is, but it's after me. And at that point, I had never heard of the Patterson-Gimlin film. I had never heard of Bigfoot. I had no idea they existed. So years later, I went through my life, got married, had children and everything, and moved back up here because for a while I moved down to Putnam County, and I continued to hunt while I was down there and fish and everything. But when I moved back up here, I decided to Google, because I was watching Finding Bigfoot, and I said, geez, some of these sounds are, it could be what I heard on the mountain. Maybe it was a Bigfoot. So I Googled Bigfoot sightings in Dutchess County, and the first one that popped up was a sighting back in the 80s that two women had on Lake Road in Pine Plains, New York, which is the road I lived on, I grew up on. So that sparked my curiosity. That was in January of 2012. So I started going online, reading everything I could find about the Bigfoot, and being a hunter and a tracker, it just was a natural thing for me to start going out into the woods and investigating. And that's basically, I decided to start my own group, and 3 years later, here I am.
Well, you have a lot of pictures of tracks and some other images and films and things. Geez, I don't even know where to begin. I guess I'll leave that up to you. What kind of things did you start finding, and maybe just kind of take us through your investigations?
Yeah, I started out locally in Tivoli, New York, which, well, let me tell you, where I live, we own 10 acres on what's called the Sauk Hill Creek, and it's a tributary to the Hudson River. And I'm like 5 minutes away from the Hudson, and we can see the Catskill Mountains, not from our house, but right up the road or down the road from us. And so I started, I have a lot of friends that own farms and property, so I started out going to this farm in Tivoli where they raise all kinds of birds and cattle and pigs and everything. And so I started out investigating up there, figuring, that may be a good spot. And I always start out at the water source, so he has a small pond and a creek running through there. And didn't take us too long because he actually had a sighting of a black Sasquatch looking in the window of their home about maybe 8 or 9 years ago by his niece. So I said, okay, that's a good way to start. So we went to the farm and went to the water source, and sure enough, within the first couple of times of going out, we noticed tracks along this, this road that the farmers use, with the tractors and everything. And so I cast that track, and I think that was 17 inches. Then we started looking along the barbed wire fence, and we found some hair. And it just mushroomed from there. We've actually heard wood knocks while we were investigating. We heard a couple of hoops. It seems like there's a lot of activity on that farm. The farmer told me that the cows will not go into that area where we found the tracks, and that at one point they stampeded and broke down this fence that had like metal on either side, and the cows, like something spooked them out of there, and they actually broke through the fence to get out of there, and they won't go back in that area. So, we put up trail cams in the beginning thinking that we would possibly get something on that, and, that didn't happen. We never get anything except normal wildlife. I think we got a marten and, different regular animals, but we haven't really had any luck with the trail cams and the Sasquatch. So from there, the group started to get more and more interest from different local people, and more people wanting to get involved. I usually always bring my shotgun when I go, not to harm a Sasquatch, but for protection, because we do have mountain lion and bear and bobcat and whatnot. So I don't feel comfortable going without some kind of protection whenever I go. And certain areas I can't bring my shotgun, like the new investigation area is a wildlife sanctuary, so you're a little bit uncomfortable at times because we have found, other tracks of, I think I sent it to Will, of a dog-like track, and, that's kind of intimidating when you're out there. But, yeah. But, we've just found so much evidence and so many reports coming in that it's just mushroomed, and it's keeping me hopping.
How many different Sasquatches do you think are in that particular area?
The farm, I think there's at least 5. We've gotten tracks from, I think, 4 individuals, ranging in size from 6 inches to, I think, 20 inches. And then from the farm, a fellow came to my house because I have a silhouette of a Bigfoot. It's an 8-foot-tall silhouette that my son's made for me, and he saw that as he was passing by, this man. And so he came to my house about a little over a year ago, and he said he's got some strange activity going on, and he started telling me about it, and it turns out it's the next road over from the farm. So once I started going there and realized that these are the same clan because the tracks, measured up about the same size, then we started investigating there, and that's when we found so much evidence there, and we had our really frightening encounter on December 30th of 2014, yes.
What happened with that encounter?
Oh, God. Well, we didn't have a FLIR camera, and we had been studying these Bigfoot for quite some time, and the homeowner had been feeding them, and they would take the food. They would throw rocks at him when he was driving his tractor. He's had them pounding on the side of his house at night, jumping on his roof, leaving him deer heads and stones and sticks and, just doing all kinds of stuff there. So I said, well, let's call, I guess one of the guys from Massachusetts called and said, I have a FLIR camera, and I'd love to come to your area and, bring the camera. So the 2 guys came from Massachusetts, and we went into this area, and it was still light out, and we were doing a little video clip and just checking it out during the daylight with them, and we got a couple of wood knocks. So, it was real cold out that day, and we said, all right, let's go in and have something to eat, wait till it gets dark, and then we'll go out and we'll gift them at the fence where the homeowner was gifting them. So we waited till about 8 o'clock, and we went outside, and we weren't at 30 yards from the house, maybe even less, when the Bigfoot started throwing rocks at us, snapping off tree branches. We didn't have any vocalizations at all, which, I was surprised, but just started going crazy. So the homeowner was very brave, and he and the other investigator started heading towards the fence, and the fellow with the FLIR camera and myself stayed together and just kind of let them, work their way to the fence. And, I'll be honest, I was pretty scared. And so these things they broke trees that were enormous in girth, and I have all the photographs, and the next day we actually, did a video to show people the trees that these things broke. We saw some eye shine, but then when he finally made contact with the FLIR camera There were about 5 of them, and we got him on the FLIR. So he's like, contact, contact. So he was passing the camera so each of us could look at them through the FLIR. And when he passed it to me, I'm a lefty, and I hit the wrong button and shut the darn camera off. But anyway, we do have a few. Yeah, I know. I'll never hear the end of that. But we do have some footage that we will be releasing when we do our documentary. So for now, we have it, and we do show it at our presentations and stuff, but we don't want to put it out there yet. So it's just been a wild ride. I can't even believe that there's so many of them around here in the Hudson Valley. And we're only 2 hours north of Manhattan.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
it's an area you would never think, that part of the country, but it's pretty rural there, right?
Yes, yeah. We have farms around us and orchards of all kinds, and plenty of deer, muskrat, and beaver, and fox, and it's very rural here, actually. And where I live is perfect habitat for them because this creek goes through, and then it opens to a pond, and then there's a waterfall, and then it heads across Route 9G and to the Hudson River. So they have so much food here that they're here year-round. I mean, maybe some of them might migrate, and we do seem to have a lot more activity this time of year, in the dead of winter, and we have over a foot of snow right now. Mm-hmm. So it's incredible.
No, Gil, you had sent, I think, Will, a picture of what looked like something behind a tree. It was a pretty good picture, actually. I don't think it was, what do they call it, pareidolia? It's definitely something.
The Dogman one? The one standing, the light-colored one? Yeah, that was creepy. That was, we are investigating that wildlife sanctuary, and we had gone out that day. I think there were 4 or 5 of us, and Connie Emming, one of our members, has taken over the photography part of it because she's really good with the camera. She bought a new little Sony HD camera. So she was walking behind us and filming. And, let me back up a little bit. We went to this place where we investigate Tuary a couple of weeks before that photo was taken. And I was with Johnny Angel. He's also a psychic, and he likes to, he's good in the woods, and Connie and this new guy, Brian, who had never been Bigfooting before. So for some reason, Johnny suggested that we split up and that Connie and Brian take the higher trail and Johnny and I would take the main trail. Well, they're about 15 minutes into their high trail, they started to hear, these sounds. Like Connie's like, I keep hearing something behind us, And so they continued to walk, slowly, and she was filming. And then they said, let's stop and take a drink, and we'll meet up with Gail and Johnny down on the other trail. So as soon as they stopped and took their backpacks off and started drinking the water, and of course the camera was shut off at that point, they started getting these loud, like, whack, whack, whack. And so she's starting to text me to see if that was Johnny and I messing around or something, and I texted her back and I said, where are you? You were supposed to meet us. And so then she realized it wasn't us, and then it happened again, like 6 or 7 whacks, as loud as anything. So they just grabbed their packs and they took off. And then they met us down at the main trail, and they were both visibly shaken. And so we get home and we review the video, and in that video, there is a huge, what I believe is a female Sasquatch with a young infant, like on her left shoulder, clinging to her left shoulder, and a juvenile in front of her, and the mother Sasquatch has a stick in her hand, and the juvenile has a stick. And I sent this film to a producer, John Matuzzi, who is a filmmaker, and he edited the video and slowed it down, so we do have a clip, but it's from probably 40 to 50 yards away, and it's not the perfect money shot, as you would say, but it's incredible. So we think that, they got a little too close, and when they stopped to drink, then she felt threatened because she had the two young with her, and then she spooked him out of there. So we have that clip, and that was amazing. We've had other times out there, so then the next time we went, oh no, what's that? Let me think. No, that's the same clip that dog-like creature, or whatever it is, was standing when we were reviewing the clip and looking at the mother Bigfoot with the two young. There was that creature standing maybe 20 to 30 yards from the trail that Connie and Brian were on, and from the mother Sasquatch was just standing there. And, I just happened to freeze frame each frame, and there I saw it. And I sent it to Scott Carpenter, and he said, it's not black like the dog man that he has in his picture, but he definitely said, it could be, but we don't exactly know what it is. Some kind of creepy-looking thing, but it never, tried to attack us or anything.
Now, let me ask you a question. In the beginning, you were talking about the farmer that, did you say he was feeding them?
No, not the farmer. He doesn't feed them, but the habituator, which I'll call Doc because I have to protect him because he still has activity on a daily basis there. So, but yeah, he feeds them, and he's only maybe 6 miles from here, from my home, and he has activity all the time.
Does he notice a lot of bad behavior?
Yeah, he's gotten, like, I don't know if you guys believe in, like, infrasound or zapping, but this man, he has been hit so many times with, something like that makes him, and I've physically, witnessed it with my own eyes that night of the 30th when we encountered the, Sasquatch, and they were breaking down the trees and everything. Not only did the homeowner get zapped, but the man with the FLIR camera got zapped. And I was, like, right next to them, and they didn't hit me with it, but the other guys were, like, shaking, nauseous. I mean, really, it was bad. And, we didn't stay out there too much longer after that because it was frightening. I mean, terrifying.
Yeah,
So,
this sounds like probably a display in that case, sort of a warning to keep your distance.
Right, exactly. But, the homeowner has experienced some very negative things there, and, I've warned him not to go out there at night alone, but you can only do so much. I mean, it's up to him.
Does he continue to feed them?
Does he what?
Does he continue to feed
them?
Yeah, does he continue to feed them?
Yeah, every night he feeds them.
Do you get many reports of animals, domestic animals, livestock and such come up missing around there?
Yeah. Actually, 3 days ago, one of my bait customers came in, and he lives in Pine Plains, and he said that a friend of his has a farm, and a calf just vanished. They have no idea where it went. They didn't see any drag marks or blood or anything. And he took one of my cards. And then he also reported another lady in Pine Plains that has a dog kennel that's having activity around the kennel, which is pretty common. I've gotten 2 other reports of, dog from people that have dogs that have been harassed by the Bigfoot. And, I told them they will kill and eat domestic animals, and don't leave your dog out in the pen at night. You know, It's crazy. But most people aren't even aware that these things exist, number one, and if they do hear about them, they think there's only one. So, I'm trying to educate these people to what's really happening, because, when they encounter something like that and not even, realizing, they just go off in the woods or, go for a hike by themselves, and they have no clue as to what's out
going on around there.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Gail, I was wondering, as far as your research as of late, I was wondering how often you feel threatened or in danger, or do you at all?
Actually, I have a healthy respect for them. I'm always on guard, as well as our other team members. We usually go out with at least 4 people, and most often one of us is armed. After seeing that wolf-like track and seeing that wolf-dog-type creature, that really kind of scared me more than the Bigfoot for some reason, and now I know why, because I've been looking at a lot more dog-man encounters online lately, and it's pretty frightening. So, I haven't, other than that night of the 30th, and if they were going to kill me, they would have done it then, I think. But that was the most frightening encounter, and the first time I heard that horrible howling scream, that was terrifying. But since then, I do respect their area, and, I don't want to push them, and I don't want to chase them. I already know they exist, and I don't need to prove it to anyone. I'm just documenting my findings and trying to educate the public right now, and taking lots of reports. I actually got 3 last week from the same road, and they didn't know each other. One guy, Larry, called. He had maple syrup lines that he was checking, and he noticed that some of the lines were ripped out, and he looked on the ground, and there's a bunch of Sasquatch tracks. So he called me first. The next night, this man, Chris, called the same road, right down the road from Larry. His dog was out in the pen, barking and carrying on. He went outside to check to see what was wrong, shined the flashlight on the ground. There's tracks all around the dog pen. So he called me, and he was in a panic. I mean, he was, because he's originally from the city, and he said, if I would have known these things were around here, I would have never bought this house. And he said, I'm packing up and going back to the city tonight. So that was like, I felt so bad for him. And so then 2 days after Chris called me with the dog incident, this man Donald called in the same road, and he said that he had just bought 12 acres of land on that road, and they cut all the trees down this past summer. And he made a dirt bike track for his son, and he took his son out last week to ride the dirt bike, and they were getting pelted with rocks. And he said, geez, maybe these rocks are getting kicked off the back of the motorcycle tire. But then they started to see the rocks, and they weren't big rocks, but, they started to see them coming from, the wood line. So they got out of there, and he called me, and he was, kind of upset, and he's like, is my son safe to be out there, riding his dirt bike alone? And I said, well, they do like to observe children and people in general, but I don't think I would let him go there alone, And then
that's good advice.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about the missing 411, but it's kind of creepy when you hear about all these things and these people disappearing, and especially children. That I really don't want people to be harmed in any way, but or disappear. but you don't want to spook them either, so that they don't want to go out in the forest anymore.
Yeah, that's kind of a tough balance at this point with all this, because you want to make sure people are aware, but like you said, you don't want to scare them either.
Right. I have a bait and tackle shop, which, is right on the creek. We rent boats, and we have the little levee in between the creek and this little pond on the other side. So I let fishermen fish there. And these two southern guys, one guy's name is Carl and the other Arthur, were fishing, and it was July 7th, I think, at 7 o'clock, so it was still light out. And they went over on the levee, and they were bass fishing or catfishing or whatever. And evidently the Bigfoot didn't want them there and took a huge rock and threw it into the creek, and the wake and the splash scared them so much that they came flying up the driveway, and their eyes were like, oh, my God. And Carl's like, Gail, what kind of animals do you have over here in your pond? And I was like,
what are you raising up there?
I'm like, Carl, I told you I have Bigfoot here. And he never believed me. And he said, well, next time I come here, I'll bring my .357 Magnum. And, oh, God, we laughed. But he's like, I don't think I want to fish at your house anymore. But, and also last June, Jesse, one of my researchers, and I decided to go fishing up the creek, and that's where a lot of activity and wood knocks we hear. And so we were bass fishing, and I said, we own this piece of property up here, and I've never really gotten out and walked around it because my husband said we could potentially put a little house up there someday or whatever. So I said, Jesse, let's go off on shore and let me check this area out. So we as soon as we got off on the shore, there's a snapped off tree about 5 inches in girth, right? And I said, look at this. It's freshly broken off tree. So he's like, yeah, look at that. So I start crawling through the, vines and the weeds, and I maybe got about 15 feet in, and I see this nest, made out of twigs and vines and branches, and it was maybe 12 feet around in diameter. And I'm like, holy crap, Jesse, look at this. I said, this is a Sasquatch nest. And he's like, oh my God. And I said, let's get out of here. They're probably not too far away. So we did, I took a video of it and I put it on my YouTube channel. So if anybody wants to look at it, but it's they're pretty comfortable here, I guess. They have the perfect area to live in. And plenty, and then we also found a carp, the head of a giant carp that we have in the pond. So first, we saw that on the ground, and I said, well, maybe the otters got it because we do have a family of otter. But then when I saw the nest and, everything, I said, well, I think the Bigfoot got it. That's crazy.
And that's a big thing. You have to look at the context, you can see signs of other animals feeding and know that's what it is, but when something is that out of context, you're not left with a whole lot of options.
Right. I know, because my son's like, Mom, not everything is done by a Bigfoot. But, because he's skeptical, which is fine. But he lives with me, and every single day I'm getting reports or, watching videos, and he's a hunter too, so I worry about him, especially during bow season, because he doesn't carry a gun, just a bow, and I worry that, something might happen to him. But so far, so good. And I went deer hunting this year. I was saying, well, I might not go anymore because I don't want the Sasquatch to think that I'm hunting them or whatever, but I did go a couple of times, and I was trying to stay focused on the deer hunting, but my mind I was always looking around for signs of Sasquatch almost the whole time, so it's kind of hard to separate,
Yeah, I don't get you.
Yeah, Yeah.
That's for sure. Gail, I was wondering, as far as all the reports that you're taking, like, how big is your research area, and how large of an area is it that all the reports are coinciding?
Well, I guess the farthest we've gone south of here is to Pleasant Valley, which is probably about 25 miles. And then we've gone over to the Catskills. That's probably another 25 miles. A dog kennel, the woman reported tracks around the kennel, and we did find signs and stick structures and everything there. And then north of here, we're getting reports in Columbia County. We're in Dutchess. So it's a pretty big area. I mean, now I'm recruiting more people, and I'm going to start having meetings here and training people to gather evidence on their own and, cast tracks. I gave a demonstration last Saturday about, Bigfoot 101, like what to do if you have an encounter, and how to document your sightings and evidence and stuff, because I just can't do everything. I can't be in all these places. Yeah. Very cool. And there's a lot of interest here from people of all ages. I have people 80 years old that are coming to my meetings, and then college students, and even a little boy at 8 years old, which I don't know if I have two grandsons, one's 8 and one's 11, and they get kind of frightened, and their mother yells at me. My daughter's like, "Mom, don't talk about Bigfoot when the boys are there," so, but these other parents, they want the kid to learn, I guess. And he is probably going on, but I'm so excited to finally be on this show and share some of the things that are going on here. I have over 130 encounters that I am compiling for a book about the Hudson Valley. So it's...
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is. I should be I'm doing my own database, and we have a map that we put the push pins in, and I just got a new computer that's designated totally for our research. So, little by little, we're getting there.
And for those listening, Gail was one of the people that I was going to highlight, or am going to highlight, in my next book also. So you'll get to see a little bit of her there too.
Oh, thank you very much. I think I'm flooding the internet with stuff. I know that, but it's hard not to. Yeah.
That's great.
Who would have ever thought, I'm a hairdresser, a mom, a grandma, and a bait salesman, and whatever else. But
and now you're a Bigfoot hunter.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yep. That's for sure. Yes.
Yeah, what I want to know is that man that decided to pack up and leave, is his house still for sale? Because I'm about ready to move out there.
Really? Yeah. I know. I mean, he said, if that real estate woman should have told me these things live around here. And, oh my God, he was really upset. He was. I mean, his voice was shaken, and it was awful. And then he's like, "Well, they wouldn't harm me, would they?" And I said, "Well, no. Mainly they'll just try to intimidate you, throw a couple of rocks at you, or break some branches, and they might try bluff charging." And then when I said that, he said, "That's it. I'm packing up tonight and leaving." Oh God. But I've had an interesting call from a guy across the river in New Paltz, New York, and it's real squatchy over there, lots of caves and waterfalls and creeks and stuff. And the guy was walking on the rail trail, which is an area I'm not really familiar with, but it's a trail that people walk on through the forest last summer. And he heard stomping of feet, and he would stop, and it would stop, And then he'd start walking again, and he would hear, more stomping, cracking of branches and whatnot. And so he started to say, well, something is following me or something. And so what happened was he walked around this corner, and the Bigfoot stepped right out in front of him, within feet of him. Yeah, and he just froze. He didn't scream. He didn't run. He was probably in the state of shock. So he, I guess the Bigfoot then ducked and ran away or whatever, and he went home and went about his business. And last week, I believe, or the week before, I guess he lives right near McDonald's in New Paltz. And I'm going to follow up with him. We're going to go out and do an investigation. But he heard something out of his bedroom window that night. And so the next morning he went out to look around, and he took pictures of the Bigfoot tracks. So he was pretty, shaken up because he said, they followed me here. Why are they here? And I said, maybe they smelled the hamburgers at McDonald's and they wanted a hamburger or something. But he did take pictures, and he said he smelled the odor of like a skunky, musky smell. And then the one picture he took where the creature must have stepped out from behind the tree and like broke some branches, he put that online as well. So we're going to do an investigation over there probably next week, and just check it out. But it's just unbelievable. Some people, I have 2 reports of encounters that happened back in the 50s, and the people kept them to themselves, and I am the first person that they told about their encounter over 50 years ago. And I've documented both, and one of the fellows is actually a member of our group. And he was walking with a friend in Tivoli, which is only a few miles away, along the creek, and it was snowing, and it was in Thanksgiving vacation, so they decided they were going to go trout fishing up the creek, and they found these strange tracks, and they had never heard of Bigfoot either. And they said, well, they look too big to be a bear. And so they kept walking, and all of a sudden they see this big black Sasquatch bending over the creek, holding a dead rabbit in its left hand. They saw it saw them, it let out this scream, and everybody ran, and they just took off running, and they said, we will never tell anyone about this because no one will believe us. And here's 50-something years later, he actually gets up and talks about it at our meetings. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, you've been a busy lady.
Oh, my God. I have so many papers and books in front of me and phone numbers, and, oh, my God, it's just hard to get out there. And
it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it is. And reviewing the videos and the audio, and, oh, my God. So hopefully we'll get some young blood in here that's savvy with the computer stuff, and, with the college so close by, we had some college students at our last meeting, so I kind of put the word out to them that we were looking for some help in that area, and hopefully they will. I hope.
Well, your work is appreciated, that's for sure.
Well, I thank you guys. I mean, I have William's books, and I bring them to my meetings, and I suggest that people read them. I'm a little bit confused about the 4 different types, and I did watch the clip that you did, Will, recently, I think, about the 4 different types with coonbow, because now that I've seen that other thing standing up, whatever, if it's a dog man or whatever it is, and then we've also gotten in a couple of our photographs recently another creature that was hiding in the bushes very close to this actor Jeremy Davidson is very interested in the Bigfoot research, and he's actually doing a little television production about my research. So he wanted to come out with us, and Johnny and I took him to our wildlife sanctuary, and we were standing on the trail, and he had my backpack on, and his back was towards the woods, and Johnny took a picture of us, and in the picture, when we get it home, of course, there's a creature, and it didn't look like that dog-like thing, but it didn't look like a Sasquatch either. It had more of a snout, and it was pretty creepy looking, and it was only maybe 3 feet behind Jeremy on the trail in the bushes.
That kind of sounds like one of those dogman types. See, that's something people don't really understand. I think a lot of confusion comes in with the dogman type, is the snout is more, it's not really a snout. It's kind of like, you know, that simian protruding face, almost like what a baboon has, where the other types are more of a flat face. And they're really, I mean, they are a separate species. Now, this is from, you know, our insider, Mr. Black, that there are the 4 distinct types. Actually, there are 2 major groupings, 2 major species groupings, and in each one of those groupings there are 2 subgroups. So, like the type 1, the Patterson type, and the type 4 are very close, but there are differences. I mean, that's where we get confusion with people who say, well, what I saw looked more human, whereas like the 3 that I've seen weren't human. There's similarities, but that's the big difference between those 2. The type 2s and
mostly
3s,
the face? I'm sorry.
It's largely the face. The thing is with the type, see now, between the type 1s and 4s, now, of course, with the Patterson film, that's a classic type 1, what we see there. The type 4s, now the type 1s, let me back up a little bit, with the forearms are longer proportionally than the upper arm, and the legs are proportioned different. Like with the Patterson Sasquatch, the thigh leg portion of the leg is much longer, and the shin part is relatively short. With the type 4s, it's more closely proportioned to what our proportions are, a little more evenly.
I see.
And the face basically is more or less hairless. I guess you could liken it to, you know, what maybe the classical Neanderthal look might be, something along those lines. I mean, they're still hair covered, they're still larger, of course, than humans, but the proportions of the arms and the legs are closer to us than they are a normal Sasquatch. And then the type 2s and 3s are a little more, I guess, closer to the ape family, I would suppose, because they will move often on 4 legs as they do 2 legs, and they have the enlarged canines where the type 1s and 4s don't.
Right. Oh, gosh. Yeah. That's
so it's, when everyone thought it was already complicated, it's just that much more complicated.
Wow.
And then there's a whole set of behaviors that are going to be unique to each one of those species. So, and see, that accounts for a lot of the discrepancies among stories, is that we never looked at the different types before because no one knew. Right.
How would we know? Well, we got a video of 4 creatures that are coned-headed, black as coal, huddled in the swamp, and just like the top of their heads and maybe a little bit of their shoulders was out of the water, and they were in our video. Again, we didn't see them, but Connie heard some movement, and she panned around, and I think it's 8.40 on our one video, and for a few seconds we have them on this video. And when we saw the way they were huddled together, it was like they were more afraid of us than we were of them. It was just, when we saw the picture, we were just like floored. I'll send that over to Will. I think it's online as well, the video clip.
Okay.
And it was just, because they are so jet black, and the coned heads and the brow ridge was so prominent, and their faces were, flatter not like the others that we've noticed. So, yeah,
Right.
that must be a type, I don't know if that's a type
Could be the
4.
type 2s.
Type 2, maybe. Yeah, very
It's possible.
cone-shaped.
It's very difficult sometimes to tell unless they do a display close up. I don't know if you've
Right.
heard our forensic anthropologist Mark Dobbs a while back talked about, and it was based on a couple of incidents we had where we had witnesses that were in very close proximity to one of these things, and they did what's termed in anthropological circles a lip flip, where that would show its teeth.
Okay.
And they do that because in nature, it's a lot more dangerous. I mean, it could be a death sentence if an animal will actually fight another one, actually make contact. So they'll do all these displays trying to say, sort of jockey for position to see who's going to back down, and then the fight's over.
Right.
And that's what this lip flip is. It's something that's very common to primates. So if you ever get anything like that, pay close attention to the teeth, because that will distinguish which grouping they belong to. And then, of course, that whole set of behaviors is something you can watch for.
Right. Well, hopefully I don't get that close to one. That's going to be, oh, boy. Then the heart failure might come on. Wow. It's just unbelievable. And do you think that these, like, say, the dog man or the type 1, 2, and 3, do they all cohabitate together? I mean, because this dog man thing that we got was almost like it was watching out for the mother Sasquatch and the 2 young. Is that a normal thing that they would travel together?
It's something that's not really a lot known about, but let me say this. Based on what I know so far, it sounds like they do. They will, occupy the same area. So, again, it's something we know very little of at this point.
Right. Yeah, because I did ask Vic Cundiff about that. Well, I read a post that he had written, and he said that he did not believe that the dog man would be anywhere near the Sasquatch. And then I'm like, well, we have
they
picture
are.
and video, and yeah.
No, they are. We've got plenty of accounts of that.
Right.
I mean, maybe, Will, don't you think that they just would tolerate each other? I mean, I don't think they're hanging out, right? But they would just tolerate each other in the same area?
Yeah, it's likely they're probably not crossbreeding, but then again, we don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
At this point, you sort of have to keep an open mind about it until we have more information.
Right. Well, the picture I just sent Will, and I know it's from far away, but it was taken in December north of here. A hunter was in his tree stand during muzzle loading season. He only had one shot in the gun. He's in his stand, and these deer come running down the hill, and he said they were running like crazy, like didn't know which way to go. One ran in front of him. He shot it. He got out of his stand, went over to the deer. He was going to field dress it. Never heard anything, but he happened to glance up, and it looks to me about maybe 300 to 400 yards from him is this creature standing on 2 legs. It's got long, matted-looking hair, almost looks like dreadlocks to me, because I did enlarge it on my iPad. But the face, it looked kind of like a snout with a black nose. He said that he got a better look at it, and he took only one picture of it with his cell phone before running out of the woods, leaving the deer there. But he said he could see the hands, and they were dark in color. And he said hands, not claws. And he said he could see the face of it. And he ran out of the woods. He, was scared to death, and he went back the next day with some of his friends that were also hunters, and he found not only his deer that he shot the day before, but another younger doe laying dead next to his deer with a broken neck. And I was like, what? This is crazy. And I'm like, maybe if it was a Sasquatch, it may have gifted you, or, that's the only thing I could think of to, why would this creature, leave him a deer right next to the one he killed. And so then they walked around a little bit more in that area, and I posted all these pictures online. They found 8 or 9 other dead deer, all with their necks broken, the limbs, legs ripped off, and all. So he photographed all of this carnage, and he sent it to me, and so I'm looking into it a little bit farther.
Yeah, it could be they were just feeding there, too.
But it was just weird for him to go back and, laying right next to his deer. Why wouldn't they take his deer to eat it, but to leave another deer next to it? It just sounds bizarre. We can't figure it out. But when you see the picture, you'll see the face of it. It doesn't look like a Sasquatch face at all. And maybe, you can figure out what type it is or whatever. But he said it was walking slowly on 2 legs. And it didn't make any sound. It didn't show any aggression towards him. But he ran. He snapped a picture and ran out of there so fast. And it was just very strange.
It's a pretty interesting picture.
Yeah. Yeah. When I put it on the iPad, I enlarged it, and to the right of that creature, kind of squatting or sitting down, there's another smaller, lighter brown creature in the picture. And it has the same style of face, and the ears look a little pointy, and that one has ears that stand up on the top of its head, but not like a dog man ear, but looks like a fur-covered ear. And some people think it's a bear, but I don't think it is a bear. I mean, we do have black bear, but they're usually hibernating now, and they don't walk around on 2 legs that I know of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what I see in the picture, what immediately comes up is not a bear. I mean, that's
no.
That's certainly, I've seen lots of bear, and that is not one.
No, I agree. Well, hopefully we can get to this bottom of it, because it's causing quite a stir on Facebook. We have so many different
and I'll tell you,
people.
The problem with Facebook is there's just way too many armchair quarterbacks there, and I've seen, and I'll give you an example of that. There was a picture that a friend of mine sent of some footprints, and I cropped one of the footprints and put it on my blog some time ago. And I recall that Jeff Meldrum took that picture and posted it on there and said, "Oh, it's a bear track," and he had about 30 or 40 of his little followers make the claim it was a bear track. Well, they didn't have what I had. They didn't have all the foreground. And anybody that knows anything about bear tracks is they're always very close together. Bears do not have a very long stride. And in all around that footprint for 5 or 6 feet, there were no other markings in pristine snow whatsoever. So they didn't know what they were talking about. So, long story short is I don't pay a lot of attention to what people make, claims about, especially on Facebook.
Right, I know. And that's really basically where I post everything. But I think I'm going to do a blog from now on, too. It's just, having the new computer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, sometimes, I know I get so excited to show people what I found, and I'm not, saying that everything is a Sasquatch, but I'm finding some pretty strange things, and I'm just sharing them.
Yeah, it's pretty disheartening when people shoot you down, and they really have no clue what you've got there.
I know. I've hunted my whole life and been in the woods and, tracked and always been out with nature, love nature. And, to see things like the stick structures and the different nests and things that, most people would just walk by them and say, oh, that was windfall or deadfall. And I'll look at it and say, holy crap, look at this. This wasn't made by, this tree fell this way. No, something placed these sticks in this formation or whatever. And most people are just oblivious to this stuff. They just don't get it. You know,
well, Gail, I'll tell you, stick to your guns and don't worry about what anybody else says.
Yeah, I know. And I can always
I know that
block
doesn't make
them.
it any easier, but
Yeah, a couple of people I had to block because I was just like, no, I'm not going to put up with this. This guy is pushing his luck now. But you know, you try to be nice and everything, but sometimes your patience wear out with people.
I'll tell you what, this is a tough subject to be in.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
You know, for many, many years, I stayed out of the limelight. I let Renee DeHinden deal with all that. But after he passed away, then I was kind of stuck with picking up the mantle, so.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I know. Years ago, I mean, they didn't even want to talk about it. They were like,
oh, no.
Don't tell anybody. No.
Yeah.
Now
right.
It's like people are, a friend of mine, which we did an investigation last summer at her house, because her little boy saw a hand in his bedroom window, like up, you know, when he was in there in his bed, this big black hand and he freaked out, and the mom called me, and they had heard some whistling, they heard some cracking of trees, wood knocking and whatnot, and this is right across the street from an apple orchard, right behind her house, a cornfield, acres of farmland, and the neighbor had chickens, and a couple of them disappeared out of the coop. The latch was open and then closed again, so we knew it wasn't, you know, like a normal animal that could do that. And so we went out to investigate, and oh my God, the evidence, the tracks deep into the ground, the stick structures, and they were all like around the house and this little old dilapidated barn that's on the property of the farm. And we were just like finding so much evidence. And the other night, we had a bad snowstorm, and Tara and her son, Aiden, slept in the living room of the house because it's by the pellet stove and it was warm. And at 4 a.m., she was awakened by the god-awful scream that we all know about. And she was like, oh, God, I hope this doesn't wake up the boy, because we talked and we told him that we had magic dust that we were going to sprinkle around around his yard, and that the Bigfoot hated it and that they wouldn't come back for a really long time. And we showed him it was like glitter or something, and we had it in a little, you know, bottle, and we said, when we put this out, the Bigfoots won't come back anymore. And he's like, oh, thank you, Gail, thank you so much. So Tara was glad that he didn't wake up to hear that sound, because he would have been like, Gail told me the Bigfoots wouldn't come back anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then, and the next night after that happened to her, her landlord and neighbor that lives right next door that has the chickens was out shoveling her car. And it was 10:30 at night, and she heard the loudest owl call that she had ever heard in her life. It scared her so much she dropped the shovel and ran into the house. And then I got a report from my neighbor across the street. They live in an apartment, and they heard this loud owl call last week, and they heard stomping and breaking of branches. And my neighbor, Sue Ann, who's part of our team, and I went out yesterday when I got home, and we did a video clip, and we found a trackway coming across our frozen pond going right up to the neighbor's deck. So, yeah, it's creepy. Really creepy. So what I do here is I close every shade, every curtain at night, and my husband's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, look, I don't want to see those eyeballs. Yeah. I don't want to see them looking at me at night. Yeah, too close for comfort. I'm closing the ones up here right now.
Like, I'm in my house, guys. This is the safe zone, okay?
Yep, that's right. I don't mind going looking for them, but I don't want them coming on my porch or deck. And then I do have animals, and they haven't bothered. I have rabbits and chickens, and, of course I keep them penned up, but in the summer I let them loose all day long and, free range them, and so far so good. So they're respectful of my animals, which is good. Well, I just think that they're coming closer and closer to people is what I'm finding out here, because we also have the elementary school not even a quarter of a mile up from our house, and our creek backs up the school, and the kids are out there playing and, in the playground and stuff, and they have a garden back there, and that's kind of the area where I found the nest. So, I wondered if you guys have heard of stuff like this closer to homes and stuff.
Yeah, and, well, here's the thing. People, we're kind of, especially in our current state of society and everything, we waste a lot. We have a lot of food and food-type items around us, and most animals in nature are going to go after the easiest meal they can find. So I think we create that situation inadvertently around us.
Yeah, maybe that one by McDonald's is taking advantage of the garbage there.
They absolutely are garbage pickers. I found scat one time with a whole plastic bag. I mean, the Sasquatch had eaten whatever was there, plastic bag and all, and passed the bag.
Oh, my goodness.
So,
wow.
But yeah, they are absolutely known garbage pickers. One of the best places to go if you know there's an old garbage dump someplace, look around that area. There's almost certainly stories where people have seen them around there.
Yeah. It's an easy meal for them.
Absolutely.
Don't have to hunt it. Wow. It's just a little creepy, though. There's a rec park, which is about a mile from here, and the creek runs through my property and then through this rec park. And they have trout fishing contests every year. They have the ball field, with soccer, whatever they have, a swimming pool over there. And I got a report from one of my fisherman customers in 1982. He and his friend decided to go fishing along the Sauk Hill by the rec park, and there's a little bridge area, and there are two different roads. One is Apple Ring, and the other's Fruit Bud Lane. So there's this little place where the creek goes between the two roads and a little bridge, and so they went on that trail to go fishing, and they said all of a sudden this thing comes bursting out onto the trail, breaking branches, screaming, and it was blonde color. And they said it was about 8 feet tall, and it just terrified them. They dropped everything, took off running. They didn't even go back for the tackle boxes. They said, that's it. And they said they didn't think anyone would believe them at the time, so they didn't talk about it to anyone. And a few years ago, he told me. So since then, Connie and I took a ride over there in the late fall, but there was still some leaves on the trees, and we were doing a video. And we walked, as soon as we got out of the car in the parking lot, we started walking towards the little bridge, and we started hearing, all of a sudden, bullfrogs croaking. And there was no, it was silent when we got out of the car, we got the camera going, and all of a sudden these bullfrogs are croaking. And we're like, this is weird. So we walked down the trail a little bit farther, and, we didn't have a lot of time, so we didn't stay there too long. But so as we get past, where we heard the bullfrogs, and it was silent. And then as we're heading back, they started up again. So we're like, I don't know about these bullfrogs, because I've experienced hearing them the Sasquatch mimicking the bullfrogs at the habitation site by his creek. So, I was just wondering. So then we get home and we put the video on YouTube, and one of our followers said, look in the bushes, I'd frame, whatever it was, and freeze frame it, and there was something in those bushes. And we never saw it, but I think that it was the Sasquatch imitating them. It was just weird. And this is right near where, our kids play and run around, and, swing sets are right there, and they're right in this swamp.
It's a little disconcerting sometimes because, in some places, like in New Mexico where Brenda Harris is, they were known to grab kids out of the back of pickups and open windows.
Oh.
So you really have to look at, learn the history of what they're doing in a particular area to, and especially, even going back to the native peoples in a particular area, how they viewed them. And that's usually a pretty good indicator of what sorts of behaviors you can expect. Now, maybe they won't do that in that particular area, but some other areas, it's a different story.
I know. Some of the tribes believed they were cannibals. Some believed that they snatched the children and the women. So, what are we supposed to tell people? You can't say, oh, they're harmless creatures like they portray on Finding Bigfoot.
And we know they're not.
Yeah, we know they're not. I don't know. It's just they're portraying a different thing on the TV than what's really happening around the country and the world.
You're right. It's not reality what they're portraying.
No. All the times they've gone out, and not to knock them, because if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't be aware as I am and started my research. But for all the times they've been out and all the countries and places they've researched, they don't have any evidence to show. Not even
that kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it speaks for itself.
I thought about taking them here, but then I said no, because they're going to scare everything out of the woods with the howling and knocking and...
And as well as I do, being a hunter, that's the very last thing. You want to go out and observe any kind of wildlife, the last thing you want to do is make any kind of noise whatsoever.
Exactly.
So what do? They do the opposite.
Yeah, no, it's not, the thing with the camera crew, I understand they have to film it, so they've probably got 5 or 6 people at least with them, and that's going to hinder them. But when they do their solo camping and then they start knocking and howling, they know the difference between a human and another Sasquatch. Especially with the howls, with the knocks, maybe not, but with the howling,
But then they break the disco lights out and all the other crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I got a pretty good laugh when I heard about that one.
Oh yeah, I watched that, and the baby crying, and all that stuff. It's entertaining for people, but it's not the way you do research.
No,
that's
you're
the way to
correct.
scare them away.
Yep.
Where can people find out more about you and your group, and how to get in touch with you if they've had, any encounters?
Well, we're, like I said, on Facebook, and the group's called Bigfoot Researchers of the Hudson Valley. And then we have a YouTube channel, which is called Hudson Valley Squatch 1. And you can find, I think we have close to 80 video clips there on that. And we will be doing a blog soon. And then hopefully Jeremy Davidson's production will be coming out, and I'll link that up to our site. And then we have another filmmaker, John Matuzzi. He's an Academy Award-winning filmmaker, and he's going to use some footage from our town hall meeting in his movie, but that's a little bit down the line. He said it might be a couple of years before it's completed, but, he did bring his whole crew up, and we had a really good turnout at the town hall. The town wasn't happy about it, really, but they let us use it. But like the mayor wasn't too thrilled with the subject matter. But, oh well, we pay taxes to live here, so
that's right.
I guess they
We're
have to
gonna
let
have
us
to come
do
and-
it.
We're going to have to come and pay you a visit, Gail.
Oh, I would love it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful here any time of year, but you will be in awe of the amount of wilderness and beauty and mountains. I could take you to Stissing Mountain where I grew up. That place is squatchy. I think the clan there is very large. You know, maybe 10 individuals or more, and juveniles. So I can set that up anytime you want.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, we really appreciate you coming on with us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. You guys have a great night.